So yes, thank you for this chance to allow me to share with you my own thought process on what life is and what existence is. And I'll start with setting up the background of what life is and what we understand life to be. Now, scientifically speaking, more or less, what we know of life is that as long as there are conditions and environment that are conducive to life, that will support life, there is a very likelihood of life existing, or in a crude way, if I could say, there is a strong likelihood that life will exist. So, what does that mean in simple words? So, uh, life is not really a complicated concept, and not really a complicated mathematical equation. People have tried to explain life in their own thought process. You have a religious uh, viewpoint on what life is and what existence is. Then you have a philosophical viewpoint on what life is and what life should be. And you have a scientific viewpoint on what life is, what existence is. So, you know, we could make a comparison because I think our mind understands well when we have a reference. So, uh, let's take for example fire. Now we most of us know that fire will happen as long as there are underlying conditions uh, to support fire. So there are underlying conditions that are conducive to fire, supporting fire, and then there is a trigger, and that trigger makes the fire happen. In the same way as I was saying about life. So there are underlying supporting and conducive conditions for life to happen. And then there is a trigger point which makes life happens, if you will. So in that context, life is not really complicated. Now, again, as a way of comparison, if you start a fire, but that fire may not burn for a period of time because it's dependent on the input in the fire, and that input being oxygen, etc. The same way, for life to sustain itself, it needs to be powered, and that is energy. So life needs energy to power itself. Now, life exists at a different level, and that level meaning the complex life and the simple form of life. So you have a microbial or a bacterial life. That's how we understand life started on Earth. Now, those are a simple form of life, but they also rely on the food that they consume to power themselves, because that food provides them the energy that they need, and that energy powers the life. Now, these simple life form create the environment for complex life form to exist, and that complex life form being our friends in the animal kingdom, and us as human beings. So, in a way, all life that we know of is interconnected. So, we are in a web of life. If we are trying to explain life in in a simple context, the web of life meaning the interdependency, and all life is powered by energy. So I am differentiating what is energy and what is life. Life and energy are interlinked, but life needs energy to power itself. Now, deviating from this topic a little bit, power plants produce a lot of energy, creates a lot of energy, but they don't have life. So life, and what I'm trying to do here is try to, in a simple way, explain explain life and energy. So what is the next step, if there is a next step? Now, people have tried to explain sometimes that life and energy are one and the same thing. Now, I'm trying to attempt here to explain in very simple terms that life and energy are in fact are interlinked, but not the same thing. Life needs energy to power itself, and the raw material to create life exist, and energy exists in abundance, and all the energy was created during the time of the creation of the universe. So the energy is in abundance. But for a life to exist, the difference is, for a life to exist, there has to be a conducive environment. The conditions have to be right for life to exist. So it is very likely that there is life on different planets or in different parts of our universe, pretty much like we have life on Earth. Now, this is me trying to connect in a more speculative way, or just poking around, and I'm trying to do that by trying to use the ancient literature that we've all come across, where we have read those literature, and the life is pitched or promoted by some of the ancient civilization as something very holy, as something very godlike, and that's why people of the ancient civilizations, at least some of them, have had a very godly approach towards life. So what does that mean? Is life a manifestation of God? We just don't know. Is the universe geared to create life? Probably yes. So is life a manifestation of the universe? In a way, yes, more or less. Now, what we cannot say or claim that life is God, because again, it will depend on how we are going to define what a God is, because we are going to use a context, a reference that we have been using for thousands of years to explain a God. So for the time being, at least in my mind, I have a high level of certainty that life is not really that complicated concept. It's a very natural occurring phenomena, and something that happens when the underlying conditions are supportive. Now, why that happens, we just don't know. And what is the trigger event? Well, we are exploring that in terms of understanding it through using fire as a reference. It's quite simple, but it's not as simple as that. But we do know that there is a trigger event as long as there is an environment that is conducive to life. Life will exist. But do we have a definitive answer to life is equal to God? Probably not. And that's why we need to keep asking ourselves questions, and that's why we need to keep having an open discussions, because that's how we will find a way to get to an answer, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. And thank you again for this opportunity.